Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Start at the beginning with us. What are the key components of having a good budget or having an
Yeah,
effective budget or a budget at all?
absolutely. Absolutely. So we're going to go back to elementary school with buckets and blocks and start at the beginning. Um, you want to have a bucket for each expense in your life, and we can categorize them. So it's so funny because that budget is such a scary, scary word. But then once we sit down and we go through it and you really look at it, 45 minutes later, you leave and you can just see the relief and that stress relief. So, the way that I recommend to my clients to budget is a 15, 50, and 5 rule. So, 15, 50, and 5, nice little nugget to try to remember. You look at your take home pay and you want to make sure that your essential expenses, so your housing, your food, your car, everything that's essential to your life, is less than 50% of your take home pay. So there's your 50 bucket. 15% should be going into retirement, and that is including an employer match. So that's that pinnacle to try to reach. That's that goal, is to have at least 15% a year being contributed to your retirement accounts, whether that's through a workplace plan or an account on the side. And then 5% should always go to a either emergency savings with 3 to 6 months living expenses. And if you've already reached that 3 to 6 months emergency savings, just a general saving.
So that's 50, 15, and 5%.
Yes. Yep.
And that leaves us with 30 to do what with?
To do whatever you need to do. So that is your spending money. That is, if you want to take 10% and put it away so you can have a girls' night out or have a night out, that's for you. If you want to put that towards a vacation fund, that's for you. If you have debt and it's more than your monthly minimums, so your monthly minimums would be included in those essential expenses because that's part of your bills, but any money over those minimums, that's part of that third.
So, and you're saying every dollar should have a job, but I feel like I get lost in the area of like miscellaneous.
Yes.
Like
Yes.
I live in an area of miscellaneous. So tell me more. You said maybe 10% goes, into like fun money for nights out, or we still have to assign it. Do you have
Yes.
money assigned as miscellaneous? And
Yep.
what counts as miscellaneous?
So that is completely on an individual level. What are your hobbies? What do you enjoy doing? What makes life exciting for you? So every dollar does have a job, but you have to make sure that you're enjoying your time. You work hard. Yes, retirement is important. Paying off debt is important. But if you don't give yourself a little bit of leniency to have fun and to enjoy what you're passionate about, you're never going to be able to stay on budget because it's going to get to a point where you're so exasperated that and so stressed that you don't have an outlet to be able to bridge that gap. So you need that. That is where that 30% comes in. So if you dedicate a portion of that to debt, you dedicate a portion of that to a vacation fund, or maybe gifting is something that you enjoy doing. It brings you joy. And that is another area. There you go.
How do you begin? If you've never had a budget before, how do you get started?
The first step to any of this, and what I recommend to everyone, and I hear the sigh of, oh gosh, whenever I say this, pull your bank statements, pull your credit card statements. Everywhere you have spent in the last 90 days, you have to pull. You have to look at every expense, and this is the worst part. I know you are not alone if this is intimidating and scary, but you cannot move on if you don't do this step. So pull your 90 days of statements from anywhere that you've spent, and you have to literally categorize every single thing that you spent on. So you went to the grocery store X amount of times, you spent this much each time. In 3 months, this was the balance for that. You went to dinner and you went out to dinner X amount of times. This is how much you spent. That was the balance for that. And once you have that, you'll see exactly where your money is going. You'll see what's important to you at that point because it really puts it out there for you. And that's where you now start to break it down. Okay, I spent $600 on going out in 3 months at restaurants. Clearly, that's something important. I'm going to budget $200 a month towards going out. And there you go. Now you have that bucket. Now, whether you take that money and you put it into a separate checking account, whether you take it out and leave it on you as cash, and once it's gone, or whether you put it in envelopes, like you said, the stuffing, completely up to you. Whatever you know is going to have the biggest effect on you and the most lasting impact that you will actually follow through.
Sticking with it seems like a difficult part. Do you have any advice about sticking with it?
It's hard. It is not, nothing about this is easy.
Yeah.
But in the long run, it's so beneficial. And for your mental health alone, to feel like you have it under control and to feel secure, it's worth it. So my advice as far as sticking with it is having the self-control to make sure you do, to know that at the end of the month, you can breathe a sigh of relief. And if you are in a place where you hate that feeling of, I don't know where my money's going, I am stressed, can I afford this, what if this happens, just having that cushion and knowing that mentally you'll be in an okay space if you do this is worth everything. And that motivation after the first month or two should be enough to really push that budget.
I don't know if this is too specific, but you know certain expenses are coming every single month. You have your rent or your mortgage, you have your car insurance, maybe a car payment, your cell phone, groceries. You know which ones are coming every single month. But what about the ones that are, I don't even want to say unexpected, but those too. Like, what about, your child wants to play a sport? That's maybe every seasonal thing. How do you file those into the budget when it's not a regular monthly occurrence?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's where you would look at where you're currently budgeting and either take away from a different bucket that is on that miscellaneous side, reduce expenses on the essential side, if possible, or if you've already had your savings account with that 3 to 6 months living expenses, maybe take a little bit away from that just to afford that short-term loss. So it's not something that you want ongoing. If it's an ongoing unexpected expense, like your child is starting to become a star gymnast and you need to pay for a gymnastics program for the next 18 years, that's different. That's an ongoing expense. That would now go into your essential expenses category, and you have to tweak where your money is going in other places to make up for it.
Making a little or a lot or somewhere in between, you should know where your money's going.
Absolutely. And your spending is always relative to what you're making. So someone who's making $50,000 a year versus someone who's making $200,000 a year, their budget is going to be very similar, they'll just have larger amounts and higher bills in the $250,000 category, as opposed to the 50. But everyone needs food, everyone needs housing, everyone needs insurance.
Okay, so your tips for creating a budgeting routine that's really realistic enough to stick to really depends on preference. Some people are going to like sitting down with a spreadsheet. Others might want to stuff envelopes.
So I am a digital person. I like to open my banking app and say, okay, I have X amount of dollars in this category. I have X amount of dollars for this. So I am kind of bank based. So every month, every 2 weeks when I get my paycheck, it goes into my checking account, and then I have it automatically put a set amount into the other accounts based on what my budget is for those. So that's my way. It's kind of like a cash stuffing, just not physical. So it's more digital.
Are there any other methods that you see that work for people who are just getting started, maybe better than someone who has mastered this?
Keep it simple. That's what I would say. Try to keep it simple. You don't need 17 categories of budgeting to be able to master it. If you want to have, it's only 30% that you really are kind of doing yourself. Everything else is fixed. That 50, 15, and 5, that's a fixed amount. So you want to keep it simple. We don't need a category for nails and then a category for hair and then a category for going out. We can make, personal spending. As your bills become higher and as your priorities change, those categories will change. So you want to keep it general so that you don't get overwhelmed.
Where do people kind of get stuck in the beginning?
I don't make enough. That's what I hear. I don't make enough for my lifestyle, and everything's expensive. And it's 100% true. And I sympathize with that. I understand that. That's usually the next thing is they'll go through everything and say, oh, I don't make enough money. That's it. But you will be so surprised that when you actually go through everything, getting, and I hate just, it sounds so cliche, but getting that $5 coffee, yes, is fine if it's budgeted for. But when you're doing a $5 coffee and, oh, it's just a $5 coffee, but it's 4 or 5 times a week, you're at over $100 a month. There are a lot of people that come back and just say, you know what, life is short. I work hard. I want my coffee. And to that I say, absolutely, you deserve that coffee. You have 30% of your take-home budget that you can find an amount to dedicate to that coffee. But that's it. If you want to spend your entire 30% of your take-home budget to that coffee, you are absolutely welcome to do that. But again, you want to make sure that at the end of the month, you didn't spend your entire budget on coffee and now you're stressed out because you didn't get to go out to dinner with friends, or you didn't get to buy a gift that you wanted to, or buy that special, piece of clothing you were saving for.
Truly. That's something we've started saying in our house. Like, we can't do it all. Like, we might want to do it all, but we can't do it all. So where are the priorities? In your opinion, what's more important, paying off debt or saving money?
So paying off debt, you always want to pay your minimums, but the hierarchy of saving is what we call it, or the hierarchy of budgeting, is to make sure you have that 3 to 6 months living expenses saved. That is priority. Once your 3 to 6 months living expenses is saved, you want to then put as much as you can towards retirement, because that's in the market, it's growing. Once you've kind of hit that ceiling where you're doing, at least the employer match, if you want to then pay off debt, you can. Anything that has over a 6% interest rate is going to be your priority, which right now is pretty much everything. So the interest rates on debt right now is extremely high. Anything over 6% is a priority. That's what you want to pay down. So to answer your question, that was a long way to answer your question. But yes, paying off debt is important, but it's equally important to make sure that you are in a space where, God forbid, something happens tomorrow, you can afford it.
Ashley, when is the best time to start budgeting and saving? And don't say when you were younger.
Yesterday.
What do you say to people who feel like they're too late to this party?
Oh, it's never too late. It is never too late. Let's get started today.
Can you give an example of sort of the difference it would make to start investing earlier? Maybe like a 30-year-old who's listening to this right now, versus someone who does start later, though.
Yeah, absolutely. So the biggest thing is compounding. And I know we spoke about that earlier, but the more you save and the better position you put yourself in, the more you will end up having at the end. So if you think about it, if you invest $100 today and you are young, you're 30 years old, you have a lot of time before you need that $100. That $100 will grow even at 5% per year. It'll continuously grow. And because you had 30 years of that balance continuously growing at 5% per year, at the end, you're going to end up with, I'll just throw a number out there, say $500,000. Now, if you start later, say you are pre-retirement, you're close to retirement, or you're close to needing that money, and you put in $100. If you've only had it, you've only have 5 years for it to continue to grow, you might be at a couple $1,000s. So the number gets bigger every single month, every quarter, every year, and that interest continues to build. Your money starts to work for you. The longer you have, the better, but there is no better time than today.
And I imagine seeing it grow is also very fulfilling and exciting, almost as exciting as maybe buying a $100 pair of shoes that you really wanted. But knowing that you're going to be set up later in life could maybe give you that same thrill if you're watching it grow, right?
Absolutely. And it's so funny. I have a teenager. So I have a 14-year-old who had her first job last summer babysitting. And she was so upset with me. We opened up a Roth IRA. And I said, you're earning money. We're going to put a little bit away, not all of it,
Mom.
just a little. Oh, she was so mad. And it's funny. So that was last summer and she forgot about it. And we didn't put much in there. I think it was like $100, nothing crazy. And this summer, she's starting her job. She started today, actually. And I pulled up the account and I said, okay, what are we budgeting to put in there each paycheck? And the account said it was up to like $137 or something. It had grown. And she was like, wait, I thought it was only 100. And I was like, no, it's grown, Rosalie. Like that's what's exciting about it. And she was like, oh my gosh, I can afford the backpack I want. And I was like, no, no, you can't. No, it's going to grow. So, but it is. So even just that little amount, seeing that difference and starting young.
You know, it's easy to be excited about your paycheck and want to just spend it all, but for her to actually have seen it grow year over year, that's thrilling.
My biggest piece of advice, if you are looking to sit down with an advisor, is find someone you connect with. So it is not a one-fits-all rule. It is not a one-fits-all personality. Getting into this business, people are like, oh, you deal with numbers, how intimidating, and math. And I said, I always say it's not. This is a people business. I am in this not because I love to see a positive bank balance at the end of the month for clients, which obviously I do, but I love to see, and what internally fulfills me is seeing someone come in nervous, of course, and then leaving the appointment. And I can't tell you how many times I've been hugged. I've been given thank you cards because it's just the weight of that stress and having that plan being put into place and just having that camaraderie, having someone that has your back in a lot of ways and wants what's best for you and is in a judgment-free zone. This is not a numbers position. This is a people position. And at the end of the day, that's all it is that's what sitting with a financial planner is. It's someone who wants you to maximize your dollars.
And not everyone has been given the tools to know how to do that.
Exactly. My biggest piece of advice along with that is look at it, whether it's quarterly, whether it's semi-annually, or whether it's annually. Stay on top of your plan, and if you need to make adjustments, make adjustments.
You radiate positivity about the budget. This is really nice, and I feel like I have homework to go and do. Thank you so much for coming on today and sharing all of your knowledge in this area. It is very helpful, and I feel like I need to go make a spreadsheet now.
I love it. Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. It was a complete joy.